This is Worfpoe's Sunday Story Hour here at Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com during auction week, our fundraiser week. And I'm reading some poems from my book Ourselves or Nothing, which is in my lot of books up for auction. I believe has three bids so far. So I'll read from this book. And the first poem is a 9/11 poem called Falling, and opens with a quote from Carolyn Forche that goes, "It is either the beginning or the end of the world, and the choice is ourselves or nothing." And of course, that's where I get the title of the book from. So this poem is called Falling. 1. I sleep with the radio on, listening to Art Bell that always makes for interesting dreams. That morning I was having one about hijacked planes, and I awoke hearing a man's voice on the radio announce that a second jet had smashed into the World Trade Center, like leviathans clashing in a Japanese monster movie. I thought, what the hell has been going on in the world while I was asleep? When I turned on the TV, onto CNN, always CNN, the Twin Towers had already collapsed. I thought I was still asleep. No, I was like Lazarus, beseeched from the grave, afraid, confused. 2. Dominique, I told you back in 1991 that a day like this would come, when the United States would be invaded or attacked. I told you this during the days and nights of Desert Storm. I watched that war on TV, alone in my small apartment, when you went back to Paris for Christmas. You called one night and said you were scared, your voice distant and digital, overseas. When the news of the World Trade Center reached you in France, did you think of me? Did you wonder if I was safe? Did you try to find my number, my email, from estranged mutual friends? You should know I've been to Africa since, and I'm not the same. 3. News and multiple channels filled my head with the pornography of this violence. I can't sleep. I don't want to sleep. I want to watch. I want the latest breaking news. I'm like an excited crowd member in a public arena waiting for the condemned to hang, to face Dr. Guillotine's blade, to stand before the firing squad or ravished lions. 4. Karen. So, 2 weeks after moving to New York, you had death stop by for breakfast. You went to the city looking for a new life with that new husband of yours. I hope you're happy. No, that's a lie. I hope you're safe. And that is the truth. 5. The TV was lying to me. I heard different things from different people I knew in New York, the emails, the phone calls, the postcards. We've all put ourselves into the lives of the victim, the heroes. Someone said on TV, a politician, a commentator. I looked at the aftermath and knew the smell was bad, death like the air at the edge of the Salton Sea in California. The TV didn't like to talk much about the smell of death. I knew that scent. I remember it well when I was in Rwanda, 1994. The rows and rows of bodies, miles of the dead. Water killed them. Cholera. 6. Yes, I have put myself into their lives. I'm one of the heroes, rushing the hijackers on Flight 93 like a fallen angel, living in the hour far from Allah. I'm also one of the New York firemen trapped and killed and then buried in the rubble. I am the falling debris. I am one of the flight crew, hands tied, necks slid open, dead. 7. The image that haunts me most is the footage of the man and woman who held hands as they jumped from the burning World Trade Center. I am both of them, making that final choice. I would have leapt had I been there. I would have fallen, and falling, news cameras would have filmed it, and people would have decried sounds of wonder and horror. The spectacle. I would have been on CNN or Fox News. I'm sure time would have stood still as I made my way down. The world would have engulfed me, warmed me, and given me a nice fluffy pillow so I could finally sleep. And sleeping, I would have dreamed. I would have woken up to a different life on a different earth, where God still had many names and just one face. And that was Falling. The first poem, a long poem in my collection, Ourselves or Nothing. Okay, so the second poem is one called Scene of Affection, Hakamba. And boy, is this an old poem. This poem is literally almost 20 years old. Actually, it's more than 20 years old. It's actually 26 years old. I can't believe I'm reading a poem I wrote 26 years ago. Okay, Scene of Affection, Hakamba. It's a long drive to your house. Drinking beer and talking helps time pass. I'm in a weird mood tonight, you say. You're always weird, I say. I'm in love with the warmth of your bed. It's more comfortable than I want to admit. Your dog is making strange sounds trying to vomit. You're worried he's sick. I tell you, he ate too much grass or something. You want the light on. I want to see your face, you say. You could be anyone. I say that I could be your wildest fantasy. You say I want you to be you. You are my fantasy. Your cat curls at my feet as we sleep. Later, I hear the cat chewing away the flesh of something in the bedroom corner, perhaps a mouse. I listen to other sounds outside your house, the mountains external. The morning has desire. I take you while you lie on your stomach. We eat pancakes for breakfast. You shower, getting ready for that dancing job you have in the city. I read a book of bad poetry. You are wearing jeans and a t-shirt that shows your brown midriff. I want to run my tongue along your stomach in a way that you may like. I'm in a weird mood this morning, you say. I kiss you. I tell you that you are always weird. And that poem is called Scene of Affection, Hakamba. The next poem is called The Power to Heal. The Power to Heal. I stood like a photograph at my grandmother's hospital bed, the x-rays of the tumor in her head etched in my head like papers of unconditional surrender. Only a month ago she seemed so full of life. I recalled once going to her home and using her old manual typewriter to squeeze out one of my first short stories. I remembered helping her to her feet that day as she fell to the floor. I was taking her to the hospital to find out why she was having these dizzy spells, these memory lapses. I stood there and wanted to touch her dried, wrinkled skin, the wispy hair on her scalp, those last fighting strands from radiation treatment, and heal her like some sort of saint, like a snake-dancing Alabama preacher with the divine gift of life, Gothic and Southern in every sense of the word. The touch. The touch. And that poem was called The Power to Heal. This next poem is called Preference. And like the last two poems that were written 26 years ago, Preference I wrote for this book, so it is fairly new. Preference. When I think about Papa and all his incarnations, I prefer the younger Hemingway in his mid to late 20s, newly minted and married to older Hadley, hanging out in Paris, starving and poor in his movable feast, hopeful and hungry, publishing his first stories and poems, working on a novel, uncertain, confident but not so cocky, seeking advice from F. Scott Fitzgerald and Gertrude Stein. This is the Hemingway I like the most, identify with the most, not the Hemingway for whom the bell tolls, who had and had not, who became the old man at sea, not the Hemingway who crashed his plane in the jungles of Africa, or the Hemingway living in Cuba or Florida. The younger Hemingway was much more pure because things could have gone differently. That first novel could have not found a home or could have flopped, easily forgotten, and he would have been someone else, someone less. Indeed, yes, that could have happened. But he had integrity then, and he did his best, more than his best, to make his mark, for he wanted one thing, and one thing only, like many do, and he got it. And for all the Hemingways that wandered, and just as hungry in Paris, New York, Chicago, San Francisco, a dozen did not make it. They died obscure or unknown, just like today. A pattern that never ends, a path that has to be taken. That poem's called Preference. This is one short one called Poem to Sharon Olds. Sharon Olds is one of my favorite poets, living poets. Poem to Sharon Olds. Sharon Olds is not just a poet. She is the prong, the pole, the metal and fine art, not ancient or savage, but prim and searching, like a scalpel or on foreskin, like a knife on the penis of a grown adulterer, the sin made plain, penance too obvious to deny, her blood every woman's blood, not just every woman's, but every man's as well, the line that crosses the shadows, the Rubicon we dare not pass, bold as any soldier, trained and beaten to master the deepest animal drive, the hunt, the catch, and finally, the kill. That was Poem to Sharon Olds. And this poem's called The Father, written for and about the singer of my former band when he became a father. This is quite a while ago. And it starts with a quote from Ian Curtis from Joy Division. Without the protection and infancy's guard, it all falls apart at first touch. That's from Ian Curtis, Joy Division. The Father. He's become a father, a new father, a father at last at 31. He went into the delivery room, contrary to what he'd said he'd do, as his ex-wife lay in easy labor. The enmity, the malevolence, the 2 years felt he lost, pushed away, pushed out. He'd expected a son, but the doctor held the purple child's legs open, revealing the fragile sex he'd learned to associate with all the trepidation the world had to offer. He'd wanted a daughter anyway. He thought at that moment of the darkness he would have to ward off from her inevitable, curious glance. He thought at that moment of the folly and futility suffered by fathers generations past, who tried to shelter their daughters from iniquity, like the wood carvings accompanying one of Blake's poems. Looking up the small girl, he knew a paternity test wasn't necessary. She had his hair. She had his grandfather's chin. "I feel biblical," he told friends. He wanted more. The wonderment, the rapture. He looked in the mirror and said, "Oh, ye giver of life!" But he wouldn't have another with his ex. He would find others. He would find someone he truly loved. But he loved all women. He wanted to impregnate every woman he saw. He wanted to father the world, to spread his semen like Christian goodwill. And that poem is called The Father. This poem Next one is called One Last Tender Kiss from God. And it's about the same person who I wrote the poem Scene of Tenderness Hakamba about. And again, a 26-year-old poem. One last tender kiss from God. It seems like it could be years later, somewhere down the line, maybe tomorrow. Maybe in a land of the never never, when I rise from my bed, the empty bed, and go outside. Something compels me. Everything seems too solid. The car is parked at the corner waiting. The driver's side window rolls down, and Anne is there. She calls to me, tells me, "Come here." She tells me to get in, and I obey. She starts the car, and we go. I feel trapped, this vehicle a shark in a sea of yesterday's fears and affections. The radio sings darkly, a tune I do not know. The voice, like angels, demons. The dashboard flashes an evil green of numbers. AM 301, FM 91.1. Is this actually Anne who sits in the driver's seat? Denim skirt and white blouse, brown hair long and brushed back, thick as any warm nest. She is wearing big, round sunglasses. Perhaps she is a creature that desires to take me to more pain or death. Whatever it is, she feels I warrant. I comment on how well she looks for a dead person. She tells me in a familiar voice all the lies I already know. The night is muggy, like a summer's night, like the night we first knew each other's giving solitary bodies along a foreign shore. She says that I will always be in her life, both in life and death. Her right hand rests on upper thigh, tanned and muscular, the dancer's perfection. Even out here, she says, I can still feel you inside me, your body on mine. I want to tell her I know what she means. I too still recall the smell and taste of her remains. We drive east toward the country we both knew. The night is a series of endless poles, the wires that connect 1,000 times 1,000 lives. She says that we can hurt no more, and she parks the car next to a pole that is slightly tilted like the leaning tower of Pisa, and next to the impish mountains of this unknown we embrace again. Her arms reach out like a damned soul groping for one last tender kiss from God. I grab at her hair. She says my name and lifts her skirt, demure, showing me she isn't wearing underwear. I touched her with feeble fingers. She moves to me. Again those arms, her mouth is lust, then her teeth like a pecking bird, then calming, caring. We twist our bodies in a strange way, almost an impossible task to achieve within the confines of this car and dream, and I fill my mouth of her need. I wipe away with the back of my hand traces of her and wonder about all the other men who have been here before as I have been here before. Another passing body, another mouth. She moves onto my lap. I clutch her legs, and she slips me into her like a saddened used key unlocking a room unseen for ages. I ask a question, but she is not listening, too wrapped into her own pleasure like some sleazy Christmas gift. Twice she groans out in her shudder, then moves away from me like a hurt animal, confused by the cruelty of a once kind master. She is quiet for a long time, and then she tells me to get out. She admits to hatred and loathing. And that was a poem called One Last Tender Kiss from God. And this next poem is about my first marriage, called Love Me Tender. Love me tender. File this under the crazy things you do when you're in your early 20s. V and I decided to meet in Las Vegas over the holidays. She flew in from New York. I flew in from San Diego. And we had fun. How can you not have fun in Las Vegas during Christmas? Maybe it was the booze and the excitement of gambling. Or more likely it was the LSD, or all three. But when we walked by the little chapel where Elvis married people, we looked at each other and knew we had to do it. Holding hands, we bought the license and waltzed into the diminutive tabernacle. He was a fat Elvis in a white jumpsuit lined with rhinestones. He donned large sunglasses, thick sideburns. He said what he had to say. V and I said, I do, and that was that. We were married. After the kiss, the Elvis minister whipped out an acoustic guitar and began to sing, Love me tender, love me true. He had a great voice, and he sounded just like the king, like they all do. When he was done, we kissed again, gave him a tip, and returned to Vegas as man and wife. A long-distance marriage could never work, and we filed for divorce by mail 45 days later. When I tell people this story, I tell it with a laugh like, oh yeah, this is something wacky I did with an ex-girlfriend in Vegas on acid. But I never let on how sad it always makes me feel, and how I'll always remember that song, that night, and that voice. And that was Love Me Tender. Okay, this next one is called Kiwi Smoothie, that I wrote just before this book was going to go to print, and slipped it in like Flynn. About a friend, an old friend, her husband committed suicide, and so I wrote this poem about that called Kiwi Smoothie. That Valentine's Day, I did not know love. Instead, I went to the memorial of someone I didn't know. He hanged himself the week before. No one saw it coming, like a tsunami showing up uninvited and unannounced, sweeping a golden beach afar and away. This was my Valentine's Day. He was to marry a dear friend I had not seen in several years. I was told they were quite happy. We're going to adopt an orphan from Haiti and heal many lonely tears. They didn't have much, lived and loved a simple life, free of the manacles that haunt most of us to this earth. Every morning he would get up to smoke a cig. That morning he didn't come back to bed. The room was silent without the sound of his snoring like a jig, the warmth of his body. She listened to the ticking of the clock and knew something was wrong. She rose from their bed, found him dangling like yesterday's laundry, swaying back and forth, gently quiet. She tried mouth to mouth. She pounded on his chest and yelled for his heart to beat like the drums he cherished. She pleaded to God. God looked the other way. The sirens in the distance, the ambulance she summoned, could not help either. At the memorial I held her for a long time. We both cried for the dead. She knew of my losses. She had been there in the past, when we both looked different and younger, playing characters we had cast. We did not speak. Nothing need be said. Nothing could be said that would make sense at last. Flowers, photos, slideshows, speeches, African drums and dancing. The heat of ancestors was in his blood like snake venom racing to the heart. She used to dance to his rhythms. That's how they met, and together created music like freshly baked cookies, warm and sweet. I watched friends and family on their feet, gyrating to celebrate a life, to remember a passing and genuflect. I remembered all those who had left me. The girl in the car crash, the Red Cross nurse in Zaire, a mentor of literature, Nana, Cindy's brain, the blood vessel that burst like a heart filled with too much joy. My son, 5 months in the womb, and his mother who tried to leave this world under our feet, her hand gripping a gift, a toy. My feet would not dance for any of them. Later I walked around downtown, that part of the city I lived for 10 years, the place my friend and I once performed theater together, the plays I wrote and she acted in, the jokes of exhibitionism. For each new play she would say, "Hey, do I get to be naked in this one?" I remember well the erotic night she shared a bed with my lover and I, polyamory when all is said, and she went from bed to bed in our drama clique, her first husband never aware until she had one affair, a scare that nearly ruined everything like a sudden 6.0 quake destroying two men, and for his sake one ran away to L.A. angry and hard, betrayed by love for everything that was tenderly shared. And now she found love, and love was taken from her, the forlorn heart of gypsies. Love is always cheated from us, someone once said. Perhaps a fortune cookie, a stale biscuit of malcontent. I stopped for a kiwi and banana smoothie. It's exactly what I wanted for Valentine's Day. And that poem's called Kiwi Smoothie. Not the happiest of all poems, I'm aware, but you know.
I like how you're going way back and you're doing your older stuff. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. This poem's called Somalia. Somalia. The hordes of naked and half-naked children laughed and demanded money or sweets, anything like I owed them something of my alien life. They pulled at my clothes, their stale stink filling my nostrils like an invading army. The dust kicked up all over my clothes when the U.S. military vehicles passed by, the soldiers ignoring me. I was just another white foreigner, another journalist, invisible and perishable, like the rebels who fired their machine guns and died every day under the unbearably hot, smelly, and indifferent African sun. And that was Somalia.
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet.
The smelly sun. I like that.
Okay, here's a poem. This one was also written newly for this book. It's called A Kind of Prayer, Haiti. She seems so calm and happy in the photo, Haiti, this unknown country shadowed by Napoleon's forgotten hand. At any moment, the beauty I witness will succumb to a rumbling, rolling disaster. The walls will crash down like Samson's rage in the temple. I will have to run, think fast, or else the bricks will flatten me like crepes in a pancake social. I will feel pain, I will feel loss, I will feel homeless, abandoned, wandering ruined muddy streets, and tripping over the rotting morals of ancestral alchemists. Like 9/11, Haiti is a series of news bites and images of photojournalism, requests for donations, radio talk show fodder. A pact with the devil did it, fills the airwaves like a herd of turtles. Haiti is a stranger I reach out to in the middle of the night, sharing my bed, of course, a damsel in the tower of adultery and divorce. Haiti is a series of books by Madison Smart Bell, scattered words, a truth to tell. Haiti is a postcard, is a posted news item on Facebook. Haiti is a letter in the New Yorker. Look, Haiti is trust betrayed, her streets patrolled by foreign criminals like ants crawling in the bed sheets. I wake up at all hours of the night, and every news channel has something Something wonderful, something horrible, something wrong, something strange about Haiti. She who looks so calm and happy in the photo, but is waiting for the next earthquake, having narrowly escaped torture by a sadist in a uniform, that wolf in sheep's wool. Still she awaits the next upset to arrive like a special gift from Dionysus, a bottle of merriment, a heebie-jeebie of voodoo thought transmission set to hit the airwaves of the morning. Good morning, guten morgen. Aujourd'hui, je suis Haiti. Now see me falling, crashing, breaking, healing, free. With the help of the sage, Haiti, your chaos will know calm, the embrace of the uncrazy. So alone, you know, a solitary picture, like the enigmatic leaf on the tree at the end of waiting for Godot. Nothing very definite. A kind of prayer. Precisely. A vague supplication. Exactly. And that was A Kind of Prayer, Haiti. Now I'll jump to the last poem in the book, which is called Rwanda. Rwanda. 1. Rows of bodies. As we drove to the border at Goma, Zaire, it looked like the bodies extended for miles, covered in abandoned cloth or makeshift mats, or not covered at all. The dead were lined alongside the road as if they were awaiting turns into the passage of nowhere, and nowhere was where we were. Age, sex, clothing didn't differentiate. They were from every class, from the poor who were always poor to the elite now running away and living among the impernicious. I saw an albino black child dead among the populace of the dead. Other small children stood alone, crying and confused, looking around for lost parents or siblings. There was another line, that of the living, the migration that had begun, the search for safety in a neighboring nation, the fear of the future behind them like a stalker in the city street. 2. It wasn't easy sleeping in the Red Cross tents. I kept hearing children crying, adults crying, people shouting, a few scattered gunshots now and then deep in Zaire. And it was hot, of course. The mosquitoes were out, flying about the bodies, swarming over the lake and river where there were more and more bodies. 3. I took 5 showers that first day back in America. I couldn't get the stench of all those bodies off me. There were bodies dancing in my head and I wanted to dance with them. 4. I was acting strangely and people were telling me so. On the one hand, I wasn't talking about Rwanda. People sent me email, called me, asked me, "So what was it like?" I was very minimal in response. "It was hot, smelly, and disgusting," said I, and I said no more. Maybe they thought I would come back morose, with decrepit tales in the apocalyptic language of the slaughterhouse, but I was cracking jokes, sending people strange email, and drinking. I was drinking and not sleeping. Well, I'd get in a few hours of sleep. I'd wake up and start drinking at 8, 9 a.m. I called people on the phone, people all over, to talk about anything but Rwanda. I had bags under my eyes. I wanted to go out and party, to dance, to raise hell. Those dead bodies were dancing in my head, and I wanted to slam dance with them all. 5. Something wasn't right. 6. The next week, I calmed down. I was feeling better. I could sort this out now. I went down to the beach in La Jolla and listened to the waves crash to the shore. I waded in the water. I think I saw what looked like a stingray, or maybe it was a jellyfish, in the water. The news that morning said something about being careful. The heat was bringing them closer into shore. I didn't care. I liked the feel of the ocean splashing on me, salt taste in my mouth, and not the taste of death, death on my tongue, on the roof of my mouth like some kind of evil jam. 7. For a moment I felt a strange and soothing calmness, like everything would be all right, and it would be all right for the rest of my life. The waves pulled away and went back to sea. that feeling was only for a moment. And that was Rwanda. And all those poems were